rifles used by the sepoys in the British Army. So infield rifles, this cartridge could have been only used once you actually would have bitten off the upper layer of this cartridge before placing it inside the gun. So this upper layer was said to be made up of the fat of either the pig or the beef or the cow meat. So of course, because of that particular fat of animals, now this was treated very badly. This was seen as a direct attack on the religion of the sepoys at that point of time. All right. So this particular incident has really annoyed the local sepoys of India, because they, either the Muslims used to see it as an attack on their religion, or Hindu used to see the attack on a religion directly by the British authority in terms of using this fat of animals, and which you have to be chewed off with the teeth, then only it could have been used in the infield rifles. So of course this incident has enraged him, and finally on 10th May 1857 the revolt of 1857 took place. But the beginning of that has already been let down by a very popular hero of India, Mangal Pandey. So Mangal Pandey had already let down the beginning of that on 29th of March 1857. On 29th of March 1857, the 34th Native Infantry, 34th Native Infantry, and one of the sepoys of 34th Native Infantry was Mangal Pandey. So Mangal Pandey was the first who became the pioneer of the beginning of the revolt of 1857, but on an organized scale, on a larger scale, on a mass scale, on 10th of May 1857, the revolt of 1857 is said to have begun in India. So these were the causes under which this particular revolt began in India. All right. Now on these causes, we have to simply analyze the entire, we can say, circumstances under which this revolt took place. Fine. Now we will discuss about the nature of 1857 revolt as well. Now see, in NCERT there are a lot of things that, in fact, there are 3-4 natures have already been discussed. But beyond that also, if you go by reading, let's say, some advanced books, especially I would say Grover and Grover, now there you will find that there are more dimensions added to the nature of 1857 revolt. For example, the very famous nature of revolt was it a merely sepoy mutiny? Alright, because according to the British historians, it was merely a sepoy mutiny. It was merely a sepoy mutiny. So let's discuss the nature. The first nature of this revolt was it a sepoy mutiny? Alright, that also is very important. You see, why are they calling a sepoy mutiny? Because obviously this revolt was laid on the front by the Indian sepoys. We have just seen the example of Mangal Pandey. We have also seen the 10th May 1857 in Meerut. In Meerut, the sepoys of India, they revolted against the British establishment. All right. So this was led by sepoys. Therefore, the Britishers used to classify it only as a sepoy mutiny, having no popular character, having no popular support. All right. Now what we have to understand, it was sepoy mutiny only in the beginning. But on 10th of May, when it took place in Meerut, in next day only, when the revolutionaries of this revolt, they reached to Delhi and they asked, of course, Bahadur Shah II or Jafar to become a part of the leader, in fact, of this particular revolt. It actually enraged the entire masses altogether in India. So after that, it became a popular revolt, because here peasants, the local artisans, the workers, some of the, you can say, small merchants, that they all participated. They all participated in this particular revolt of 1857. All right. So that's what actually we have to understand. It was not merely a sepoy mutiny. It began with a sepoy mutiny, but in due course of time, it acquired a popular character in India, and that's what actually is the first we can say nature of the revolt of 1857. The second is highly debatable, and that is, was it a war of independence? So was it a war of independence? Now see, this particular debate has started with the, of course, evolution of historiography of India. So in the early 20th century, the historiography of India emerged, of course, from the British's historiography. Indian historiography also emerged as it is called as nationalist historiography. So of course, there the historians of nationalist historiography like V.D. Savarkar, so V.D. Savarkar, Dr. S.N. Sen. Now, both of them had written very famous book on this particular issue. For example, the very famous book of S.N. Sen was 1857. So he wrote 1857, and V.D. Savarkar wrote a book named Planned War of National Independence. So V.D. Savarkar, he said it was a planned war of national independence in his book, that was also very famous book, that is First War of Indian Independence. So he wrote a book that is First War of Indian Independence, First War of Indian Independence. Now see, in this book, V.D. Savarkar said it was a planned war of national independence. S.N. Sen, in the book called 1857, he mentioned that revolt began as a fight for religion but ended as a war of independence. So the idea is, both of these scholars, they subscribe to the view that it was a war of independence. Fine, but their views have been countered by R.C. Majumdar. Alright. So R.C. Majumdar. Now R.C. Majumdar has countered the views that it was a war of independence. So according to R.C. Majumdar, what it says, he says that it was neither first nor national nor even a war of independence. So R.C. Majumdar says it was neither first nor national or nor war of independence. Now this statement is very important. From this statement, there could be a direct question that can be asked to you in your mains examination. So do you agree that 1857 revolt was neither first nor national nor a war of independence? Alright. So this question can be asked to you directly in your main examination. So what actually would be the answer of that? See, first, so we agree with R.C. Majumdar that yes, it was not a first revolt that took place in 1857. Even NCERT writes that between 1763 to 1856, there have been more than 40 major uprisings that took place in India against the British authority. Alright, one of the famous one was the Sannyasi rebellion of 1763, which has also been popularized by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. Alright, so Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, he has written Anand Math novel. Alright, and Bankim Chandra Chatterjee in his Anand Math novel, he has mentioned clearly what? He has talked about Sannyasi rebellion. This question can also be asked to you in prelims. That in Anand Math novel of Bankim Chatterjee, which revolt or rebellion has been mentioned? It is Sannyasi rebellion of 1763. Alright. Now see, So the idea was, it was not first. Why? Because already in the past also there have been several uprisings, civil uprisings, tribal uprisings like Hos, Bhils, Kols, Santals, we have just discussed about it. So these all uprisings had already taken place even before the outbreak of 1857 revolt. Alright. Therefore it was not first. Now, nor national. Now see, was it a national? So what is the concept of nation? So see, nation is a very holistic concept. It includes few of the very important things. One is, there has to be a, let's say, common identifiable citizens who identify themselves towards a particular land or territory. There has to be also a geographical boundary, and there has to be also a state. So with these three features, you can talk about that there is a concept of a nation. So nation is an emotional, socio-psychological concept. When you feel to have an emotional attachment with your people, with your citizens, then it is called as a nation. So the idea is, concept of nation was not in existence at that point of time. The concept of territorial alliance, the territorial affiliation, was definitely in existence, but India as a nation was certainly not in existence. Alright? Top of that, whatever issues and episodes or incidents or examples that we have, whether you take the example of Rani Lakshmibai, alright, or Hajrat Mahal, fine. Now these examples only indicate that these people did have their attachment to their own territory, which was only regional, which was very local specific. Not as a India as a nation, they wanted to have a freedom for that. Alright. And top of that, this entire outbreak of 1857 revolt took place only in the northern and central part of India. It did not go into even the southern part of India. So in South India, it did not take place. Alright. Therefore, the concept of nation of India was not in existence, and hence this statement is correct towards that particular extent. Now, was it a war of independence? So obviously it was a war of the local independence, not for the independence of India. Alright. A war of local independence, especially led by different people. Of course, Bakht Khan, Maulvi Ahmedullah, of course you can say the example of Nana Sahib, fine. Then you can see the example of Rani Lakshmibai. Now these all examples are there which only indicate that there was having an affiliation towards their own territory. So they wanted to have independence from the British control or British authority, but for their own state, own subas, own provinces, not as a nation of India, not as India as a nation at that point of time. So it was not a first war of independence also in that particular context, but definitely it was a first and organized, the first highly organized war of independence of their local territories, which later on culminated into the development of a consciousness of the belongingness upon each other, and in that way the concept of nation also emerged with the process of India's freedom struggle. Alright, that was the, of course, understanding from this particular aspect of nature. Fine. Now see, in this particular context only we have to understand the nature of the revolt of 1857. Alright. At the same time, NCERT also mentions that it was, the 1857 revolt was not a sudden occurrence. It was not a sudden occurrence, and it was also never a planned revolt. So was the planned revolt or not? Now see, here there is a debate. Here there is debate because we have some incidents which indicate. So we are discussing the third aspect of nature. Third aspect was that no sudden occurrence or a planned revolt or a planned revolt. Now see, here we have a debate. Why here debate? Because there are you can say incidences, you can say the evidences in fact with the historians which says that of course In the inquiry that was conducted by the British authorities after the suppressing and repression of this revolt of 1857, they do indicate that the people who were in India, they were planning to actually conduct a particular revolt of 1857. For example, a person named Sitaram Baba. Now, Sitaram Baba, he was asked to provide an evidence about the 1857 revolt in one of the, you can say, the investigative agencies formed by the group of judicial officers appointed by the British authority in Mysore. So here in Sitaram Baba had indicated that the revolt was a planned one. It was a planned one. And secondly, there's also evidence that the revolutionaries, they transmitted or they transmitted the information. They exchanged the information by supplying the specific, you can say, motifs like chapatis and red lotus. So chapatis and red lotuses were becoming a modus operandi of the revolutionaries to transform or to transmit the information, to exchange the information from one place to another place, to actually enrage the masses against the British authority. That was actually the process over there. Fine. So in this context, we have some evidences which says that it was a planned one. But at the same time, we also have that evidences that on 10th of May, that outbreak of Sepoy mutiny was definitely not a planned one. It was not a planned one because I'll let you know that once the revolutionaries, the Sepoy revolutionaries, they revolted in Meerut on 10th of May and next day reached to Delhi to meet Bahadur Shah Zafar. Bahadur Shah Zafar had no idea, had no any iota of idea that there had been a revolt already undertaken by the Indian sepoys, and they are now looking after Bahadur Shah Zafar as a leader of this particular revolt. So indirectly you can understand, had it been a planned one, Bahadur Shah Zafar would have been completely in information about this all revolt. But it was not like that. He was not even ready to participate in the revolt. It was only General Bakht Khan who convinced Bahadur Shah Zafar to participate in this revolt and to act against the British authorities. Alright, that was actually the idea of the third dimension, the third nature of the 1857 revolt. Fine. So nature is also done with. Fine. Now the consequences. See, the consequences are too many. First and the foremost consequences, what we have to understand, that 1857 revolt was suppressed very brutally. All the revolutionaries were killed by the British authorities. Like you can understand, General Bakht Khan, Nana Sahib, who actually led the revolt from Kanpur. Then similarly, you can understand Tatya Tope, one of the famous, very heroic personality in the entire revolt of 1857 revolt. Rani Lakshmi Bai. Now they all were killed. They all were killed by the British officers, and officers like John Lawrence, Outram, Havelock, Hugrose. Now they were very much, you can say, powerful. You can say, the officers of the British Army at that point of time, who were able to suppress and kill all these revolutionaries, either by brutal force or by the conspiracy that under which they also played a very significant role by aligning with the local jamindars, the local talukdars, by promising them that their land will be given back to them if they cooperate and support the British authorities against the revolutionaries. For example, Tatya Tope. Now Tatya Tope was killed in April 1859. And how? He was asleep, and his friend, who was a local jamindar, who gave the information to the British authority about Tatya Tope's hiding location, and hence he was killed. So you can understand the local jamindars and all that played a very significant role in the suppressing of this particular revolt. And therefore Lord Canning was very right when he said that the local rajas, the chiefs or the jamindars, they played as a role of breakwaters in the storm. Otherwise the Britishers would have been swept away from the Indian land due to the huge, you can say, mass support of the 1857 revolt, especially North and Central India. So indirectly you can understand that these people also played, the Indian people also played a role which went against the interests of the local revolutionaries of the revolt of 1857. Fine. And we have enough evidences which also says that even the middle class, the educated class, they also could not support the revolutionaries of 1857 revolt. Alright, and that's the reason why they were also killed. If you see the NCERT writes about several factors behind the, of course, defeat of, behind the decline of, behind the failure of the revolt of 1857, of course, at that point of time, like modern weapons were missing altogether. There was no organized leadership, organized plan that after the revolt, what would be the course of action. There was no any centralized leadership. Alright, Bahadur Shah Jafar was not at all an efficient leader at that point of time. He was already an old aged person. Alright, he was not even interested in actually participating in this revolt. So this what actually was a condition under which this revolt was undertaken. Fine. So these all factors went against the revolutionaries, and finally, with the, of course, sheer, you can say, great administration and brutal power and force of the British authorities, they were able to suppress the entire revolt of 1857 itself by 1858 and altogether. Fine. So this is how the revolt came to an end, but it brought a major change both for the Britishers as well as for the Indians. Now, Indians for the first time realized the consciousness of one country. And top of that, it paved the rise of, it paved the 1857 revolt, paved the rise of the modern national movement of India. Alright, had it not been there, perhaps the educated class, the middle class would not have understood the real nature of British authorities, because they supported British authorities during the 1857 revolt because of one fundamental factor, that they were having a false belief that Britishers have come here or had come here in India to bring any reform. Alright, they realized the true nature of the Britishers, especially by a person like Dadabhai Naoroji, when he published a paper called Train of Wealth. Alright, so afterwards they realized the true nature of Britishers, and therefore they actually started organizing the entire movement in a very, you can say, organized manner on the platform of International Congress. So that was one of the achievements of this revolt, actually, in terms of mobilizing the masses to participate in international movement in a much more organized manner. Fine. But it also brought a change for the Britishers, especially the administrative, military, and also attitudinal changes were introduced by the Britishers. Because one of the strengths of the 1857 revolt was the Hindu-Muslim unity. And one of the officials of the